to another Risk and Reward seminar at Gowling. Thank you for coming so early in the morning. I have 2 young kids. I had to negotiate this for about 2 months. So I empty the dishwasher next Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and I can't play with my friends anymore. So my name is Eric Macramella. I'm an IP. I do intellectual property prosecution and litigation, a lot of online enforcement. Anytime someone has something on the internet, they call me, whether the request is appropriate or in some cases inappropriate. I'm a partner at Gowling's. I've been here since 1999. I've been a partner for, I don't know, about 10 years or so. After I speak, my colleague Dan Cole, who flew in from Toronto for this, will speak. Dan has been practicing for a long time as well, and he's an advertising lawyer. And he's very, very good at it. Gives you simple, clear answers. In our profession, that's not always the norm. I'm sure you're laughing because it's true, and then you get a bill, you're like, what happened? I understand. So, Michelle, is there a changer? Do I have a, no, there's no changer. Should have hired somebody. Is it too late to get an Arlington student down here? So, I love, you're laughing, but it's true, they're cleaning my car as we speak. It's not a bad idea. I should be surrounded by students as I negotiate with my wife. It's not a negotiation because I never have a chance of winning. Anyway, I love this photograph. Back a few years ago, this little girl named Tessa was turning 16 years old. And so she wanted to have a party with her friends. This is in Hamburg, Germany. So she went on Facebook and she invited her friends to a party. So she just posted it on Facebook, was having a party. She didn't mark the posting as private. You have that option, private or public. This was a public posting. As a result, all of these people showed up to her home as the result of a single posting. All boys, all men, I don't know what this says about guys, just desperate, will do anything for attention. Cops came, there were fights, blood was spilled. This was incredible. I remember this was happening as I was going in to talk about social media a few years ago, and I remember I just grabbed it. It's such a compelling image of the power of social media. It's obviously not a fad, you all know that. From a business standpoint, you leverage social media. From a brand messaging standpoint, it is deeply valuable as a tool, as a marketing tool. This is really interesting. The online ad spending for TV spots, or sorry, the ad spending for TV spots was passed by online ad spending. So traditionally, brand owners would advertise through television and through radio and magazines, and now it's changed. They are now allocating significant funds to online advertising, and in some instances, not spending as much on TV ads or other traditional form of media. This, to me, was a very meaningful benchmark, and again, deeply representative of the shift that we are seeing. Again, another indicator of the shift we're seeing is great show House of Cards in its first season was nominated for, I think, was it 13 Emmys or something? This was the first television show that wasn't on regular TV that was nominated for Emmys and ended up winning some Emmys. Again, reminds us of the shift. So here are your main social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'll focus on these. I used to have MySpace up there. I figured it was loyal, but I think it was just time to, I felt bad because it was up there for so long, but I just deleted it. So these are the main ones. I'll focus on that, and again, the point of this presentation is twofold. It's shining a light on social media. Whatever your level is, some of you are more sophisticated than others. Hopefully it will give you some new information and also make you sensitive to legal issues that materialize online and how you can go about trying to identify them or in some instances address them yourselves. You don't have to always call a lawyer. You might be in a position to address the issue yourself. God forbid a lawyer give you tools that you can use on your own. That's why I live in such a small house. So your top social media leaders. This is Facebook plus Twitter. The first four are Facebook, so they're cheating, obviously. But you're looking at 440 million friends plus followers, Twitter plus Facebook. And then you've got Rihanna, Katy Perry, YouTube, Shakira, the Biebs, Ronaldo, Lady Gaga, and Eminem. And this list kind of reminds you, if you're on Twitter or on Facebook and you're providing information, it's still infotainment. You know, Gowling's has a Twitter account. It's always going to be limited in its value because people go to Twitter for infotainment. They're not going there necessarily for sort of erudite, serious information. There is certainly a value to that, and for every business. But if the more fun you can make those 140 characters, the more you're going to gain some traction. Top Facebook, again, the top four are Facebook, Shakira, Eminem, Rihanna, at 87 million friends. I just joined Facebook, actually, believe it or not. I've been on Twitter for a long time, have a few followers there, and I realized that I have no friends. Coca-Cola, Ronaldo, YouTube, Vin Diesel is there. I think that's magic. I don't know how that happened. And then Michael Jackson's estate is there at the bottom. And top Twitter, Katy Perry, Bieber, Barack Obama, YouTube, Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift, Justin Timberlake at the bottom, and Ellen DeGeneres and her show. She was one of the first to Twitter along with Ashton Kutcher. I think a lot of us associate Ashton Kutcher with Twitter, and same thing with Ellen. Remember when she was on Twitter, I was like, what is this? I don't understand what it is. So brand owners are, of course, very social in the ways that they go about leveraging their brands on social media. 2/3 have a Twitter account, half have a Facebook account, half have a YouTube channel, and about 1/3 have corporate blogs. Blogs are a little bit more difficult. If you do not update your blog on a regular basis, then it is of no value. Some brand owners are very good with that, and then some have just kind of given up and focused on other forms of social media. The one that I find interesting is the YouTube channel. Does anybody here have a YouTube channel? So just a few. And so Kyle, right?
Yep.
And so what do you post on the YouTube channel?
Videos, testimonial videos, anything going on.
And because top of mind is Facebook and Twitter, right? And then YouTube channel, I guess, is probably 3rd. But you have to direct them there, don't you? It's not something that's intuitive. Is that the sense that you get?
Yeah, mainly LinkedIn is our biggest one, but
right.
We post on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, drive people to use videos and post on it.
And I think that's kind of the lesson, that every brand, every business will be able to utilize different forms of social media as it sort of accommodates their brand. Brand owners advertise products and services, communicate news and special events, which is advertising, connect with customers, which is a form of advertising, and monitor customer satisfaction, which is a form of advertising. Facebook, 1.3 billion active users. Average user has 130 friends, none of which include me. People spend over 700 billion minutes per month on Facebook. True story. Someone once said, oh, is that per person? Sometimes you don't know what to say. So I just said, no. 365 times. Average users connected to 80 community pages, groups, and events. This is the key, 150 million active users using Facebook through their mobile communication device. This is the change, isn't it? Is in the old days, you're watching TV, I'm watching a ball game, there's the ad, I walk away, the ad is on the TV, I don't take it with me. Now you're taking advertising with you. That's the value of social media, and that's why those devices are so critically important. About half of Facebook users log in any given day. Total number of Facebook pages, 54 million. Number of languages on Facebook, 70. 75% of users are outside the US. Number of fake accounts, aka my mortgage, 81 million. Facebook revenue for 2013 is all I had available, 6.1 billion. So about 1/4 of users check their account 5 times a day. See if anything, it's kind of how I am with my fantasy leagues. Nothing changes on a Wednesday in football, but I keep checking it. I should speak to someone about that. 18% of 18 to 34-year-olds check Facebook when they get out of bed. At least it's not in bed. Average time spent on Facebook per visit is 18 minutes. That's another change. Nearly 20 minutes. Radio, 5 to 6 minutes. That's why you're listening to the radio. They keep resetting so often. And if you listen to a show that goes 3 hours, it's repetitive because they say they believe you're in your car only for a certain amount of time, and so they want to keep resetting. Of course, the drawback is that listeners then stop listening, go to a podcast where there are no redundancies. So that's going to force the radio industry to shift its model as well. 350 million photos uploaded per day on Facebook. If you're on social media as a business, photographs are far more powerful than anything you could ever type. That's what gets the attention. Just think about how you are when you're scrolling through Twitter or through Facebook. This is just exponential, tremendous growth. And in April 2009, 200 million users, and fast forward 6 years, 1.44 billion. Really exponential, unparalleled growth. Twitter, 500 million users, 300 million are active, 500 million tweets per day, up 400 million from June 2012. 40% of those on Twitter do not tweet. People are now using Twitter as a place to get your breaking news before it breaks, basically. Now, if you want your news on any event that is unfolding, Twitter is the best place to go. Despite some of the failings they have and some of the issues their shareholders have, this is where Twitter dominates. Breaking news. You have the intermediaries are now gone. You have people on the ground, just regular folks, tweeting things out. This is what I am seeing. This is what I am recording. That's now where people go. Time between the first tweet and the billionth tweet was 3 years, 2 months, 1 day. And the driving force of Twitter. And as an advertiser, you love this, don't you? 25 to 54-year-olds, that's the driving force. Lots of disposable income here, a pretty good demographic, a pretty inviting demographic if you are an advertiser. 28% of retweets are someone begging. Please retweet. Don't beg, it's not attractive. That's what I was told while I was speed dating. 60% of Twitter users access Twitter from the mobile communication device. Again, absolutely critical. You're taking the ads with you. And about 20 million fake accounts. I come across a lot of fake accounts. Some are very elaborate, and they're designed to piggyback on the goodwill of a third-party mark so as to misdirect traffic to a third-party website. And at that point, they may fish for your data or simply direct you to a competitor. So they're recognizing that very little effort has to go into create a Twitter account, but for them, the return is disproportionately high. LinkedIn, 300 million users. Number of new members every second, 200 million users in the US. LinkedIn is in 200 countries and territories. The average time spent on LinkedIn is 17 minutes. Again, Facebook was 18. That's a lot of time. Again, that's a lot of time to have a captive audience. Average time, only social networking site that 50 to 64-year-olds use more than 18 to 29-year-olds. Again, they may well have some income as well to spend. Most used adjective on LinkedIn is responsible. That word's changed. Any ideas what the word was when the economy was booming? And any thoughts? What if the economy is doing really, really well? People are not describing themselves as responsible. Anybody want to take a shot at what that word may be? Any? Huh? Innovative? Yeah, I like that one. That's really close, actually. Any other thoughts? The word was creative. I'm creative. And now that things aren't going as well, I'm responsible. I'm going to look after your money. 30 million recent grads or students on LinkedIn. Turkey, Colombia, and Indonesia are fastest growing countries. I have a number of Facebook cases in Indonesia. These are misappropriations of trademarks and copyrighted works by third parties in Indonesia seeking to enjoy some kind of financial windfall, because since now, obviously with the economy, there are really no borders, they can get someone's goods and bring them in and sell them. So it's very hard for some of these brand owners to maintain strict control over how their brand is being used. The good thing is Facebook is very receptive. I've had stuff taken down in Malaysia, Mongolia, Vietnam, and Indonesia, and that's just this week. 43% of visits, again, are from a mobile communication device. And 3 million companies have a LinkedIn page. Just want to give you sort of a snapshot of the internet landscape generally. You have about 1.7 billion users worldwide. 250 billion was spent online last year, 43.2 billion in the second quarter, and these are your top performing products. About 42% of users are in Asia. Any of you work for companies that offer services or goods in Asia? Well, if you don't now, you may well at some later point or end up working with a company or a firm that does that. The amount of revenue that I am seeing being generated by local clients in Asia is staggering, to say the least. It feels like everyone's rich but me. 24% of users from Europe, only 15% of internet users are from North America, and then 1% from Australia because they're hanging out at the beach. So, your legal issues on social media. What are the things that you normally see? You see impersonation, trademark infringement, username squatting, and copyright infringement. I want to let you know what these are, how you fix them practically, and what these look like. Okay, so Facebook, I'm going to focus on Facebook and Twitter because these are the sites that come up all the time. LinkedIn comes up once in a while. Generally, that's someone pretending to be a CEO, so you'll take that page down. But Twitter and Facebook obviously dominate. This is just up here. I want to show you what a username is for Facebook. That's the username over there. After the post, this is called the post domain name path after the /, and then on Twitter the username is Starbucks. So for Facebook, you can, I'm sure some of you are aware, you guys can create your own username now. It was a new feature about 5 or 6 years ago. I remember when it was being released, I was driving down to Detroit for the Game 7, the Stanley Cup final between the Penguins and the Red Wings, and I had prepared all the clients for it, but the questions were arising, and we kept pulling the car over, answering the questions, because you don't, Oprah says you don't text and drive at the same time, and then we just kept going on. So, impersonation is what it sounds like. You pretend to be another person in order to deceive. If you are guilty of impersonation, Twitter can suspend the username, so the @Gowlings, for example. Twitter users, however, are allowed to create parody accounts, commentary accounts, fan accounts, right? And Twitter provides certain wording or factors they'll consider to determine whether your site, whether your Twitter account is an impersonation or not. And so if you distinguish your account with qualifiers like not, fake, or a fan, or the bio, Twitter bio indicates this is a parody and the tweets are not designed to mislead or confuse, you may be permitted to keep your impersonation account because it becomes a fan account or an account dedicated to critical commentary. However, and this is key, the Twitter account may have words like, this is a fake, or it's not real, but ultimately that is not the test. The test is, what is the overall commercial impression created by that Twitter account? If the overall commercial impression is such that the end user believes that this account is affiliated with or otherwise connected to a brand owner, then it should come down. So if you're confronted with a situation where you have not and fake and it says parody, but it's misleading, if it's a fake credit card account and it says this is fake, but then the tweets are interest rates, for example, then the end user may be confused as to source. So don't be deterred in issuing a complaint in a circumstance like that simply because this person is using the right words. Despite that, confusion may still be likely. Here's the thing with impersonation. If I file an impersonation account, if I say Dan is impersonating me, and I'm successful, @Daniel Cole, the username, is going to be suspended, but it won't be transferred to me. Even if I am Daniel Cole. I'm not Daniel Cole, but if I was Daniel Cole, I want to be Daniel Cole, but I'm not Daniel Cole. If I am Daniel Cole, it's still not transferred to me. And that may be a bit counterintuitive to you because you're saying, look, he's impersonating me. I want that. I'm Starbucks. He's not Starbucks. But it's just suspended. So what do you do? Here's a good example of one such case. So Nick Kyprios, there's a fake account, Nick Kyprios at the top. So he secured the username Real Kipper. This had a real impact. At the trade deadline a few years ago, Nick Kyprios tweeted out that the Canadians had made a trade. Now, I knew the trade wasn't real. I'm a Canadiens fan because the trade made sense and was reasonable. Right? It's still too soon to talk about Subban. That tweet was run across the AP, across the country, and it was being reported on TV, on radio, through different forms of, via different platforms. That's the power of 140 characters. If he files an impersonation complaint, he doesn't get his name back. Does that sound fair? No, it doesn't sound fair. But at law, it's all about how you frame your complaint. So if you're Nick Kyprios, you don't file an impersonation complaint. You file this. You file a trademark complaint. Right? Trademark infringement effectively is that someone's use suggests that they're affiliated with or endorsed by the brand owner, when in fact that is not the case. Right? So the overall commercial impression is designed to deceive or mislead the end user. There's some type of connection between two parties. This Twitter policy, excuse me, this Twitter policy does provide for the transfer of the username to the brand owner. So if it's Pizza Hut, for example, and I'm Pizza Hut, and Dan is Domino's, and he has @Pizza Hut as his username on Twitter, and it's the exact same site, it looks like, obviously you don't file an impersonation complaint, you'll file a trademark infringement complaint. And that's more intuitive. Well, it looks like trademark infringement to me, they're using my brand, and then I get the username transferred over to me. It's a bit trickier in the case of Nick Kyprios because at first blush, a name does not function as a trademark. A name is only elevated trademark use if it functions as a trademark. Calvin Klein is a name. Slap it on the back of jeans, suddenly it's a trademark. Nick Kyprios is a bit more difficult, but the way you frame it is you say the name is a name, but it also functions as a trademark in association with broadcasting services in the field of sports. That's a service. So his name is more than just a name, it is also a trademark. The point I'm making is this. Like anything else, the choices you make are critically important. If you make the wrong decision with Twitter and you file an impersonation complaint, you don't get the desired result you were hoping for. Namely, apart from the account coming down, securing that username. So you determine the goals you have ahead of time, and then you use the right type of policy. The thresholds are different, but this, to me, is your starting point. It's always your starting point because you can get so much more. There's also a username squatting policy. People will pick up usernames, not use them, and then hope to be contacted, and then make some money off of that. So you can file a username squatting complaint if you wish. If it's not being used in association with an account, it's just sitting there, there are no tweets, no images, no graphics, anything, then you may want to do that. But again, my focus would be on the trademark complaint because that casts a far broader net. The one thing I want to say is this. It's a bit tricky with Twitter. Remember I showed you how fast Facebook grew? Twitter grew even faster, relatively speaking. Facebook, their in-house counsel and the legal processes they have in place are very efficient. You file a complaint today, you get an automated response within minutes, and generally within 24 to 48 hours, the Facebook page can be down if it's an infringing site. Twitter, and they seem to know consistently what they are doing. They've been trained to identify instances of infringement. Twitter is a little bit different. Response times lag, could be a day, 2 days, a month, you never hear back. And the application of the law is all over the map to the point where you can refile a complaint, which I've done, and get an entirely different result. And in cases where it is, like it's like a law school exam question of trademark infringement. I mean, everything is going wrong here, okay? Everything is going wrong, and Twitter will come back, no, it's fine. And the other person will say, oh my goodness, this is horrible, we're going to take it down. Here's the one thing about usernames I also want to mention is that when you get it transferred over, let's say I'm Starbucks, and Dan has Starbucks 999. For some reason, let's say that is a value to Starbucks. Both usernames cannot be used in association with the same Twitter account. Nor can you hyperlink one to the other. Like you can hyperlink nhl.ca to nhl.com, right? On top of that, the issue is if you don't use a username for 6 to 9 months, Twitter will cancel it. So if you go through the whole process, secure the username, you might lose it in 6 to 9 months. So what do? You create an account, and every month or 2 months, just tweet something out. Hey, if you're looking for us, we're located here. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect system, but it's the way to hang on to that new username and not have any issues. Copyright. Here's the issue with copyright. I talk about picking the right policy. If someone has misappropriated your intellectual property on Facebook and they have your logo there and that's the only instance of copyright infringement, the rest is trademark infringement, if you file a copyright claim, what happens? Facebook removes the logo, but the account stays up. So make sure you file the right complaint. Copyright infringement is misappropriating someone's work, copyrighted work, photograph, tagline, whatever it is, substantially reproducing their work or part of it so that it's recognizably theirs effectively. So copyright can be a very effective tool to get certain works, copyrighted works, removed from a Facebook and Twitter page, but make sure if you want everything to come down that you also allege trademark infringement. And so here are my tips. Number 1, think of your trademarks. Secure your main marks as usernames through Facebook and Twitter. All you need is a unique email address for every username and a unique password. It takes all of 10 seconds. It's so fast. Just create these email addresses through Gmail or through Yahoo. Secure them. It doesn't cost you anything. And trust me, if someone misappropriates your IP as a username, it's going to cost you a lot more to get it back. So do that through Twitter and Facebook. Also, just run your brands through those social media platforms. See what comes up. You might be surprised that someone is ripping you off. Happens more often than you might think. So review those sites for unauthorized use of your intellectual property. And then if you come across unauthorized use of your trademarks or your copyright, then address it. Address it through Twitter and Facebook. You file complaints. The complaints that I mentioned are all filed through the sites themselves. They have online forms. The one thing I'll add is, if you don't have a registered trademark, you can still file your complaint. So if I'm alleging trademark infringement, I want at Starbucks to come down, I don't have a trademark registration for Starbucks, the forms will ask you for the registration number. You just leave it blank. And you know what? At the end of these forms it says, anything else? That's when you put in your spiel. Because there are 2 kinds of trademarks in Canada. A registered mark and what's called a common law trademark right. A registered trademark is that piece of paper you get after a year and a half after applying for your trademark, and it gives you rights across Canada, irrespective of where you've used. It's a very strong, effective tool. There's also something called a common law trademark right. Those are trademark rights that arise by virtue of the use of the mark in the marketplace, whether you have a registration or not. And those rights are enforceable. But because it's use-based, if you've only used in Ottawa, then your trademark rights only extend are enforceable in Ottawa, not across Canada. So you can't stop someone in Vancouver, for example. That being said, Twitter and Facebook will allow you to rely on common law trademark rights as part of your complaint. So don't be deterred. If you used your mark, it is going to be enforceable. Every case is different. Your likelihood of success depends on the facts at play. Every trademark is different. Okay? But definitely be proactive, and you'll have fewer and fewer headaches, I promise. Any questions on the IP side? We're good? Okay. So I introduce Dan Cole again, Dan, advertising lawyer, and he'll speak to you about contests and advertising online.
Great.
Just hope I didn't break it. Good morning, everyone. As Eric said, I'm from Toronto, and I had to fly in last night and stay in a hotel. I also have 2 young kids, so you can't imagine the negotiation I got when I was in a very nice hotel last night, as opposed to sleeping in the house with 2 screaming children. So, didn't have to drive just a few minutes to work. So, I wanted to talk to you quickly about advertising and marketing on social media. Eric did a really good job, I think, in the beginning of highlighting all of the potential rewards, right? Looking at the size of these sites, the bandwidth of users that you can reach. But I want to talk to you a little bit about a few of the key rules of thumb and then maybe some of the risks that you see in playing in this space and then how to try to mitigate those risks. So the first key rule of thumb that I have in this space is that there is no such thing as risk-free. It's just intuitive, it makes complete sense. Unlike traditional advertising where we would sit in a room, we would carefully craft the message, and then we would put it on TV, or as Eric said, on radio, this is a conversation, right? It's a conversation with millions of your closest friends. You have no idea how the other side of that conversation is going to react. So just intuitively, there is no such thing as risk-free. So this is a little formula I put together when I was trying to come up with the idea of how to explain risk in social media. As you saw in the video at the very beginning, you have this extremely powerful communication tool. Everyone in here has a phone. Very, very good ease of dissemination. Anybody can tweet something, anybody can post something, both from within private meetings or on their own time. You have this extremely wide and diverse range of audience and tastes and tolerances, and I'll show you a few examples of some things that have gone horribly wrong in social media to illustrate that point. And then nothing is private, right? You saw the example with Tesla. Very, very little, if not nothing, is private. You put all of that together and you net out that there is some form of risk. So as long as we can start on the understanding that there's no such thing as risk-free, I think now we can try to look at how to mitigate those various risks. The other thing to keep in mind in this space, and this is one of the most common fallacies that our clients come to us with is, well, it's happening on social media, so surely it's fine, right? It's different somehow than what you were normally doing. The same rules that applied before still apply. So all the rules that Eric mentioned, all the trademark infringement, copyright infringement, IP, contest promotions, false and misleading advertising, just because it's happening on social media doesn't somehow make it different. So you still can't lie to people in your advertising just because it's happening on social media. The other trick, though, is that now you have a contract with every social media site with whom you engage. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all the sites that Eric mentioned, you as the user, when you are going to go on and create an account and post content and engage with users, are agreeing to their terms of service. Those terms of service, as you would expect, are completely one-sided in favor of that site. So you have to take a very close look at those terms. Make sure you understand the rules that you're agreeing to play in that space. By way of example, extremely broad indemnities, warranties and representations, you're going to be on the hook for anything that happens vis-a-vis that site. And that site reserves for itself, as you would expect, extremely broad discretion. They can take down your site if they feel what you're doing is inappropriate. So that's the other kind of angle to this. Not only the traditional laws that we've always had to consider, but now all these contracts that we have with every one of these sites with whom we're engaging. And the big note of caution in that space is that those terms of service are revised very frequently and often with very little notice. So Facebook is a really good example of that. They've got rules and promotions for everything, advertising policies, contest and promotion policies, platform policies, and they'll make little changes to those policies. As Eric said, they're very sophisticated. They've grown so huge, and they won't necessarily tell you that those changes have happened. And so now the promotion, the advertisement, the contest, whatever it is that you were doing on their site may somehow be in violation of their policy, and they can take it down. And if they take it down, there's risk for you in that. There's legal risk. For example, if it was a contest that was just shut down in the middle of the contest, there's legal risk for you if that happens. There's also reputational risk, right? Your page was there, now your page is not there. Your fans, your users are asking what happened. So I wanted to walk through a couple of examples of, saying, the wide range of risks and tolerances and what people think is funny and other people do not. Here's an example of, IHOP. It's a big brand in the States and, flat but has great personality. They tweeted that out. You can imagine the backlash they took for tweeting something like that. Earlier today we tweeted something dumb and immature that does not reflect that IHOP stands for "we're sorry." I mean, that's what you're left responding with because somebody in their marketing department thought that this was a good idea. Just when you thought it was helpful. So here is a link to an article that talks about sexual assault and how to avoid sexual assault. The caption of the article, sexual assault is always avoidable. No, it's not, right? Obviously it's not. They take an extreme amount of backlash for this. So they're trying to be helpful. They're trying to put out material that they feel is helpful, but they frame it in the wrong way. just when you thought it was a good idea to engage. So these are called tweet ups. They're very risky unless you really know what you're doing, but this is JP Morgan Chase. So this is happening at the height of the financial crisis in the States. JP Morgan Chase said, so you can come and basically tweet with one of our top executives, ask us questions, and we will come back to you with answers. Can I have my house back? Does JPM stand for just pay more? What's your favorite type of whale? Okay, tomorrow's Q&A is canceled. Bad idea. Back to the drawing board. So before it even gets started, this gets shut down. Just when you thought it was an appropriate time to respond. So here you have a breakfast cereal company. Boston, our hearts are with you. Here's a bowl of breakfast energy we could all use to start the day. This is on the morning of the Boston bombing of the marathon. It's probably not the right time to hawk your products in that type of situation. Our food tweets this morning were frankly insensitive. Our deepest, sincerest apologies. That actually only comes after they let this go on for quite some time. The backlash was immense, as you can imagine. So there's key learnings in all of these examples, right? They're entertaining and funny, of course, but at the end of the day, there's good key learnings. Here's another good key learning. Don't let bots take over your accounts. And so here you have US Air and American Air. Congrats to American Air and US Air on creating the largest, shittiest airline in the world. Thanks for your support. We look forward to a bright future. Like, you can't have these automatic responses coming back to that type of thing. And of course, people pick up on this, right? It's funny that they're responding to every tweet coming their way, especially when this happens, right? And so this is the kind of, the risk you face in this space, that's not a legal risk, right? That's a reputational risk. You look like an idiot. Okay. Just when you thought you would join the conversation. So here is DiGiorno, pizza company. Hashtag why I stayed, you had pizza. So if they'd taken 30 seconds, 5 seconds, and Googled why, hashtag why I stayed was trending, they would have realized it was about domestic violence. And it really ultimately had to do with Ray Rice's wife, or fiance at the time. Ray Rice, the NFL player accused of domestic violence against his fiance. She wrote an article about why she stayed. Hashtag why I stayed. That's why that was trending. Not a good idea. A million apologies. Did not read why the hashtag was before posting. I mean, they owned it, right? I mean, you got to own it, but at the end of the day, it makes you look ridiculous. And then here's another example of just making sure that you understand when you've got accounts and circumstances change, and you've got automatic responses that were ready and ready to go out. Don't let that happen. So Joan Rivers posting about her new badass iPhone 5 days after she died. So here we have her. She's written this. Somebody's written this on her behalf. She dies. No one looks at the system, realizes that's set to go out on a certain period of time. Obviously, it looks a bit ridiculous. So those are just examples, as I say, there's no such thing as risk-free. So they give you good kind of key tips in terms of running your social media practice, not letting bots take over your account, actually taking 5 seconds to look why something is trending before engaging, understanding that what you think is funny, others might not think is funny. And so now I think I just want to dive kind of quickly into the various legal issues, the most prominent legal issues that we see on a day in and day out basis when it comes to social media. And so the first is, and this is the question that usually comes to us, is we've got this bot tool, we've got some type of data scraper, and it's going to go and it's going to grab a bunch of stuff from all over the internet and it's going to pull it back and we're going to put it on our website. Surely there is nothing wrong with that. And so the question really is, well, is stealing still stealing, right? I mean, at the end of the day, all those rules that Eric talked about, trademark, copyright, IP, all those things, they still apply, right? Just because it's on the internet does not mean it's free for a company to take. So if I wanted to take it as a personal user, the risk to me is obviously very low. I'm still stealing things, still copyright infringement, but I'm going to post it on my fan page. Who cares? The company, the organization, the person in the tweet, they're not going to get upset by that. But if you're a brand, you're a company, you're using it for a different reason, right? You're using it for commercial purposes. And that changes the rules of the game. And so the way to think about this analysis is you look at the terms of service of any site from which you are taking that material. And you say, do those terms of service allow the content on that site to be used for commercial purposes? If it doesn't say that, and there are several that do say that it cannot be done for that purpose, then that's a non-starter. You can't take stuff from that site for your commercial purposes if that is expressly prohibited. The next thing you need to look for is this, what we call like a flow-through license, right? And so YouTube is a really good example of this. And so YouTube says, when you post a video on YouTube, you grant a license to YouTube. YouTube needs that license because they are now broadcasting that content to the world. But what you really want is what YouTube says is, when you post a video on YouTube, you grant a license to YouTube and every other user of YouTube. That's what we're looking for. We need to make sure the right flows through to us as the ultimate commercial end user. And so if you can use it for commercial purposes and you have that flow-through license, then you've got to look at the terms to say, well, are there specific ways in which it must be done? And so, like YouTube, for example, says you can't just take YouTube's content, even though you have that flow-through license, and just take the content and do whatever you want with it. You have to use what they deem to their embeddable player, right? That's how you have to use the content. So what they want you to do is take the embeddable player, put that on your site, flow the video through that embeddable player so that people know that it ultimately comes from YouTube. So just taking stuff from other online sources can be extremely risky unless you go through and do this various analysis. The last piece, and I'm going to talk a little bit about implied endorsement in a minute, but this is the other issue to consider. Let's say you do all of that stuff. You can use it for commercial purposes, you have a flow-through license, you use the embeddable player, but the video contains content that might otherwise raise risks for you, right? Just because you've done all those other things. If it's got a celebrity in there, or it's got third-party content or rights and music and things like that in there, your use for your commercial purposes of that content, despite all those other licenses, is your risk. You put that, if it's a video with Sidney Crosby in there, and you put that on your site, that is your risk for using his image for your commercial purposes. So that's the other piece to consider in that analysis. So it's a complex analysis, but at the end of the day, I mean, it really boils down to you need to take a very close look at the terms of use of each site with which you want to engage. So here's another big trend in social media, and this is influencers. And so these people are people who have huge social followings, right? They're either celebrities in some cases, or they're bloggers. They're people who've spent enough time and effort in building up a social following. And these people are extremely attractive to brands and organizations because that's an immediate way to get their base of followers, right? And you saw in the video that Eric played at the beginning, something like 78% of people trust peer reviews, 14% of people trust advertisements. So that's exactly what this is intending to get to the heart of. Eric's a really influential guy. He's got like 17,000 followers on Twitter. I would rather pay Eric or associate with Eric to promote my brand because I know I'm going to reach his 17,000 followers. If he says he likes it, that's good for me, right? Versus going out and creating an advertisement for that. The problem is that there's what we call a material connection there, right? I've given Eric something to do that. I've paid Eric to do that. I've given him free product to do that. There's a material connection there. That material connection needs to be made clear to the ultimate end consumer. And so that's why in advertising you see things like hashtag paid, hashtag sponsored. What it is it's telling you that I have a relationship with the person that's ultimately created that content for me. Because otherwise I'm left to, like consumers are left to assume, well, Eric must really, really, really like Dan's car, the car brand that he creates, because he's out there promoting it. But if I told you that I gave him that car, let him use it for free for 6 months, that might change your perception of what he's saying about it. And so that's a critical piece. And so Advertising Standards Canada, which is a regulatory body kind of looking at advertising in Canada, they've lagged behind on this. In the FTC and the states, the Federal Trade Commission, are all over this issue. They've got extremely good guidelines on how you need to make these various disclosures. So if you're in this space, if you're using influencers, check out the FTC guidelines. ASC, Advertising Standards Canada, is actually just about to release a proposed interpretation of its requirement to disclose material connection. So just keep that in mind if you're dealing with influencers. This question always comes up, which is something has just happened in the market and we need to capitalize on it, right? You saw some examples of bad examples of people trying to capitalize on things in the market, like the Boston bombing, for example. But when good things happen, when somebody's seen with your brand, with your product, and you go, oh my God, we have to tweet that out right now, this is important, right? And the marketing folks come rushing in the door and they say, can we do this, can we do this, can we do this? So that's a point to hit pause and think of this analysis. And so here are the opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to this issue. Here you've got Pharrell Williams. Pharrell Williams was at the Grammys, and he's wearing a hat which looks conspicuously like the Arby's hat. And so Arby's takes a shot in the dark and says, hey Pharrell, can we have our hat back? And so now Arby's, commercial brand for commercial use, has used Pharrell's image. They've used his name. And so there's liability there, there's risk there, right? Because they have no right to associate with Pharrell in any way, shape, or form for their commercial purposes. But they took a risk. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got Katie Heigl. So Katie is filmed or photographed coming out of Duane Reade in a shopping store in the States. She's got the bags, and they write, even Katie Heigl can't resist shopping at NYC's favorite drugstore. So if I asked you what you thought would have happened in this case, Pharrell engages back, loves it, thinks it's hilarious, ha ha ha, they have a really good social conversation, nothing comes of it, it's good fun. She sues them for $6 million. And so when marketing comes through the door and says, we need to do this, that's the point to pause and say, listen, are we dealing with Pharrell or are we dealing with Katie Heigl, right? And I mean, so it takes time. You got to look at the situation. Google the individual, Google the situation, figure out what's truly going on. Are they known to engage like Pharrell, or are they known to sue? I mean, that's an easy one. If you can figure that out, I think you're in pretty good stead. Are you going to add context, right? Like, one of the problems here is that that's pretty innocuous, right? This is actually making an implied endorsement, saying she loves us, right? She might have just went into that store because it was the closest one, who knows? But you're making it sound like she loves you. And so adding that context is a problem. So it's a really good opportunity to step back and say, we're going to get sued for $6 million, or are we going to have a really good social interaction? And that's not an easy task in real time, because again, you know, a day later, no one cares about this. It's gone, right? And so you have to capitalize on it in the moment, which means you have to do that legal analysis in the moment, real-time lawyering. So here is a way to think about doing that, where you're not necessarily getting into the Katie Heigl risk. And so this has to do with Luis Suarez, who bites the Italian football player during the World Cup. So that happens. Everybody wants to talk about that. But maybe they don't want to necessarily use Luis Suarez's image because of the reasons we just talked about. More satisfying than Italian, hashtag Luis Suarez Snickers. So brilliant, right? I think that's absolutely brilliant. Now, some people will say, well, what about hashtag Luis Suarez? I mean, you're using his name. You have no right to use his name for commercial purposes. So there is a level of risk there. I mean, the practical side of you says he'd be an idiot to sue anybody in that moment. He was the laughingstock of the world. But that said, if you were so inclined and you didn't even want to take that level of risk in that moment, Cinnamon Toast Crunch. One Cinnamon Toast Crunch biting another Cinnamon Toast Crunch, that was tweeted right at the same moment. Everybody got what that meant. Everybody got what that meant. But now all these years later, as I put it on my slide here, you would have no idea what that meant without the context that I've just given you. And so that's a really good example. I mean, I say there's no such thing as risk-free. That might be as close to risk-free, I think, as you can possibly get, because that is not using his name, it's not using his image, it's not using any other thing that he could bring any kind of claim on, yet everybody in the moment knew what that meant. The other big kind of trend in this space or thing to consider is what's called native advertising. And so this is it an ad or is it content? This is trickery, right? Like, that's what it ultimately boils down to. You can't deceive people. And so you see this, and this is not a new concept, it's just being kind of brought to the light in social media, but these are like advertorials, right? Newspaper or magazine articles that were written by, you know, brands, or had editorial control by the brand and put it in the magazine. You read it and you go, wow, it's a really good article. They're really, really promoting Toyota, but okay, I guess that's it. And then you realize that Toyota paid for the whole thing. You know, that's always been around. Product placement, it's always been around. But it's really, really come to the forefront in social media. Because what you see, and this is like when you're reading an article and you get to the bottom of the article and it says, you know, from around the web, more things you might like, top 10 places to drive on your honeymoon. You go looking, oh my God, look at that. And then you don't realize that the whole thing's been paid for by Expedia. And so this is where you see hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored. What you have to do in this context is you need to make it very clear to people that this is in fact advertising. If we've paid for the content, if we've created the content, if we've had editorial control over the content, it is advertising, it's not editorial content. Marketing hates this, right? Because the whole point of this is to make people think that it's real content. And then when, you know, because again, 14% of people trust advertisements, they don't want people to know it's advertisements. And so that's where the law and marketing, that's a great example where the law and marketing are at complete odds, right? Marketing wants people to think that it's editorial content. The law wants you to know that it's advertising. And so this is what we're seeing. So when you see things like hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored, it's either the influencer, the material connection issue, or native advertising. How are we doing on time? Okay, perfect. So I'll just end on this then. In terms of the way, so those are examples of obviously how you do all of this. Eric said at the beginning that we like to kind of put some power back in the hands of people, right? I think these are examples of exactly how you can do that in social media. And that is having policies and procedures in place to make sure you're doing this properly. There's a huge common sense intuitive component to this. Obviously, don't tweet the IHOP tweet. That makes sense. But in terms of how you manage your sites, how you manage your communications, here are a couple of examples of the types of policies you would want to consider. So having an employee policy is critical. Making sure your employees understand and know who can speak on behalf of the organization, what they can say, the approval process, all of those different things, the disclosures that need to be made, but the fact that they're an employee who is tweeting on behalf of the organization. Having that policy will help mitigate some of this risk. Having a moderation policy will help mitigate this risk. So moderation being the people who look at your channels, the people who sit there and look at your Twitter channel 24/7 or whatever the frequency is, and say when something goes wrong, because something always goes wrong, how are we going to manage it? If you've pre-thought of this, if you have a policy in place that says when A happens we do B, when B happens we do C, and so forth, you will be better equipped to handle it quickly and deal with it swiftly than if you're thinking about it in the moment. When all of a sudden something happens, you go, holy crap, never thought of that, what are we supposed to do about this? Get the team together, call the lawyers, okay, meeting tomorrow at 8, fine. I mean, it's gone by then, right? At the end of the day, that is moved on, and whatever damage was done to your brand reputation will now be perpetuated and exponentially grown. And so that's something to keep in mind. The moderation policy is you thinking in advance how we're going to deal with all these situations. And so one example on the moderation policy is things like this. Malicious posters against other users. Moderators can deal with that. That's what moderators do. Complaints about the functionality of the products. Okay, that needs to go to a product representative for a response. Negative comments about sensitive political or worldwide situations. That's a trained PR professional. Like, what are we going to do when these situations arise? Who's going to respond? How are we going to respond? And if you've pre-thought of that, at least to a large degree, I think you're going to find that you will be able to manage those situations quite well. And the last one I'll mention is a posting policy, which is these are kind of the public-facing rules of the road, right? If you want to play on our space, if you want to come onto our fan page, participate in our contest, whatever it happens to be, have some rules of the road which give you discretion to take the actions that you deem appropriate. We don't like what you're doing, we're going to stop you from doing it. We're going to try and take down your content, we're going to try to disqualify you from participating in the promotion or whatever it happens to be. Have clear-cut, comprehensible rules that show people what your expectations are for them participating with you on social media. So I think I'll end it there. Is it in terms of time? Yeah, good. Great. Okay. And any questions on any of that? We're happy, or what Eric said, we're happy to take.
No questions?
That's it. We covered it all.
We did. Well, we want to thank you so much for making time and coming out to another Risk and Rewards seminar. We know it's early. Hopefully you found this interesting and helpful. And look forward to seeing you guys again. So thanks very much for coming. We appreciate it.